It's happening. Republicans are making their next move on what could become a historic tax overhaul. Right now, it's been going on for about an hour and 11 minutes or so. The House Ways and Means Committee is beginning its markup of the GOP tax reform bill. House Speaker Paul Ryan says lawmakers are moving quickly, along with the Senate, to get a bill to the president's desk. Watch.
We're on track for moving this through the House before Thanksgiving. That's our plan. We expect our friends in the Senate to be about a week behind us.
Some Republicans, though, are not yet sold, raising concerns about the deficit and the elimination of state and local tax deductions, or SALT. Watch.
So if this tax bill increases the debt too much, you're a no?
I am a no. I want to make sure that we have reasonable assumptions in the process for growth estimates.
But the state income tax, that would have to take away that deduction would have a really devastating impact on New York State, and it can cause people to leave the state. And the fact is, New York is a donor state. We give $48 billion more to the federal government than we get back. So right now, there's still strong resistance to that.
Missouri Senator Roy Blunt is vice chairman of the Senate Republican Conference and a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Good to have you along board this hour. Thank you.
Harris, good to be with you.
I want to get just one word about the House, because it seems like a lot of pressure if you got to get this done by Thanksgiving. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we really can't act until the House is done. We can't officially work on a tax bill till they've sent us a tax bill. And I just heard the speaker say by Thanksgiving. I hope that's right. And then I hope we act quickly. I think the deadline that really matters is getting a bill on the president's desk and signed into law by the end of the year. I'd be very disappointed if that doesn't happen. And I think it won't have the economic impact it needs to have if we don't get it done this year, but we'll follow the House as quickly as we can, and it's a priority. It's a priority for working families, and it's a priority for growing the economy.
And I would have to imagine that it might get a little bit more politically sticky, if you will, as you go into 2018. You've got a year where you've got midterm elections.
Well, I just think if you let this drag into next year, the big loss is that people can't spend the last weeks of this year and the very first weeks of next year planning on a tax bill with a decade of certainty. That'll make a difference in growth. Our growth right now is better than it's been in 8 years. You know, for 8 years, we've seen hardworking families stuck in an economy where the jobs weren't getting better because the economy wasn't getting better. And there are two ways to increase your take-home pay. One is to take less out of it, which this bill needs to do. And the second one is to have things that create a more competitive economy so you have a bigger paycheck to start with. If this tax bill meets those two criteria, it'll do what it needs to do, and families will benefit, and hardworking individuals will benefit because of that.
You know, I want to talk to you about half dozen or so Senate Republican members who've raised concerns. And I'm curious to know, with that many of them, how big a fight could this be, and what are a couple of the issues that you're dealing with already anticipating?
Well, you know, I think we're waiting to see what the House bill looks like. I'm not on the Finance Committee. I'm sure there's a lot of planning and discussing going on both with members and staff there. But I think a really wise thing for the Senate to do right now is to let the House do its work. Don't begin to draw lines of what has to be in a tax bill or what can't be in a tax bill. Let's see what the House can pass, and then let's see what we can do to make it even better and get it back to the House and get it on the president's desk.
That seems so logical and workable. I wonder if they're listening to you.
Well, I hope they are. I hope they are. And I think in the last 5 days or so since the House bill came out, haven't heard too many senators saying much about the House bill. Most of the discussion, as it should be, is on the House side. You know, it's easy for the House to say bad things about the Senate and vice versa, but there's something so important that I think you're hearing minimal advice from the Senate until the House sees what the House can do, and then we'll see what we can do together.
All right. An exception to that is Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who's worried about small businesses and the pain that they'll feel from what he knows to be currently on the table. And that is not, you know, the pass-through legislation where you have most of what a small business would earn now would be taxed like an individual, which is different than how it is now, and actually puts a bigger burden on them.
Well, I've always thought that was the hardest part of this to write, how you do a pass-through with the idea that the pass-through should mean the small business is as competitive as possible with the corporate structure without using the pass-through as a way to hide the kind of income that all other Americans pay income on. So money that grows the business and goes back into the business should be treated differently than money that people take home as wages. And that's a hard thing to write into law. And Ron Johnson, great businessman, great small businessman in his own right, can be very helpful, I think, in helping work that out.
All right. As we have the markdowns, I'm just curious, any idea where they'll start with their red pen?
No, I'm not sure where they're going to start, but they're looking for ways to be sure that you meet the rules that we've met with a very conservative budget in terms of the amount of growth that's projected is growth that we surely should achieve, and then looking at whatever dynamic scoring capacity is available to see how that $1.5 trillion deficit increase really doesn't turn out to be that, because you're going to have an economy that's growing. If we just grow at the 70-year rate after World War II, we wouldn't have any deficit in any plan anybody's talking about in terms of deficit of revenue income. The average for 70 years was 3.4% annual growth. This is going to be the first 3% year in a long time if President Trump can head us toward 3% as we finish the year.
Spending cuts have come up as something that maybe will be talked about as it turns to the Senate. I'll be watching for that as well.